Greetings. Yesterday, TEOTW Ministries put up a YouTube community post mentioning me, among others. And so I wanted to make a quick video which offers a brief response to what they typed. And their post reads as follows, quote, "Next time the cult of E, Genesis 49ers, Sean Harris, Hebrew of Israel, Abu, Orthodox Moor, etc., try to spin their fake haplogroup hypothesis, which is an educated quote-unquote guess, please have them explain why someone who is an expert in genetic ancestry, Razib Khan, disagrees with them," end quote. And then they provided a screenshot of some text without providing a title, a source, or a link. Nonetheless, that text is from an article which Razib Khan indeed did write. He wrote it 9 years ago, and it was titled, "Please Ignore mtDNA and Y-chromosomal Haplogroups." And I'll share a link to the article in the video description. I'll share links to all my sources. Now, for those who don't know the context and background to that post, the twins over at TEOTW Ministries are part of the diverse Hebrew Israelite spectrum. They believe that the West African diaspora in the Americas, which descends from victims of the transatlantic slave trade, are the biblical Israelites, the descendants of the biblical Jacob. And they themselves used to hold to a patrilineal definition of Israelite, where an Israelite is one who descends paternally from Jacob. However, they later learned and revealed that their own paternal haplogroup is G. Meanwhile, the majority of the West African diaspora has subclades of haplogroup E. And it's impossible for both E carriers and G carriers to descend paternally from the same Bronze Age progenitor, so the TEOTW twins were faced with either concluding that they themselves don't descend paternally from Jacob, or that the majority of the West African diaspora does not descend paternally from Jacob. And while they occasionally flirted with the latter, they ultimately decided to just declare haplogroups a bunch of irrelevant, hypothetical nonsense. And strangely, they have repeatedly pretended as though the popular geneticist Razib Khan agrees with them on haplogroups being irrelevant, and that was the context to them sharing that excerpt from an article from 9 years ago. So really, the central question here would be, does Razib Khan see Y-chromosomal haplogroups as having any relevance to efforts to gain insight into paternal lineages across long stretches of time? Now, the TEOTW twins wish to depict the people they mentioned, such as myself and various members of the Yap Gang, as avoiding that particular article. The reality, however, is that it has already been discussed by some of the very people that they mentioned, and the TEOTW twins likely already know that fact. For example, consider this YouTube community post, which I put up a little less than 4 weeks ago, back on August 4th. Note that I specifically tagged TEOTW Ministries in that community post to bring to their attention a video from the Genesis 49ers account, and in the second paragraph of my post, I wrote the following, quote, "Anyone curious about the accuracy of the twins' description of Razib Khan's position on haplogroups would do well to watch the portion from the 49-minute mark to the 1 hour 45-minute mark in particular. The twins themselves are strongly encouraged to consider the points raised therein," end quote. And this is the relevant video which I shared, which was from 2 days earlier on August 2nd. And as I alluded to in that community post, which I just showed, the Yap Gang devoted an hour to exploring Razib Khan's position on haplogroups, in contrast to the TEOTW twins' superficial treatment of the subject. Now, here I'm just going to play a 6-minute excerpt in which they discuss the specific article that the TEOTW twins took their screenshot from, right? And the point here is to show that while the TEOTW twins tell their audience, or at least that audience which is permitted inside their bubble, that the people they mentioned are avoiding the relevant article, the reality is that it has been discussed and the TEOTW twins were notified of that fact. And honestly, if the twins actually believed that the people they mentioned were running from the relevant article, the twins could easily unblock all those folks and confront them directly on social media with that article, right? But instead, they decide to remain safely behind the block wall, avoiding, any sort of direct dialogue with the people they mentioned. And they continue to misrepresent, the facts of the matter. And for that reason, I mean, honestly, with all due respect, I have to think that this is really just a bit of public theater on their part, a bit of an act for the audience, which is permitted inside their bubble. Whatever the case, we're going to look at a clip which picks up at the 58-minute, 38-second mark of the video, and this is going to run for about 6 minutes. Here's the clip.
It says, "Please ignore mitochondrial DNA and Y-chromosomal haplogroups" by Razib Khan. There's his name right there.
2013.
2013. So this is a public service announcement. If you are a user of direct-to-consumer personal genomic services, please do not pay any attention to your mtDNA and Y-chromosomal haplogroups. Why? Because they hardly tell you anything about your individual ancestry. What do I mean by this? Your mtDNA comes down from your mother's 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 mother. So he's not denying the utilization and purpose of the sex chromosome.
Dang.
He's not doing that. You guys are. Let's keep reading. And similarly, for your Y chromosomal lineage, if you are a male. So the same thing happens with your male. Your Y chromosome tracks your father's 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 father. So if you were Jacob, whatever the haplogroup you have, Jacob will have to match the haplogroup for him to be a direct paternal descendant. There's no way around it. Now, what Razib Khan is talking about in this article is what all DNA papers, well, not DNA papers, but like DNA sites point out. I believe the UCL school pointed this out as well. If you want to know about all your lines, you know, in common history, you have to take autosomal DNA. That'll tell you about all your lines, right? Indirectly, indirectly. That's all he's pointing out here. But he never denies the utilization and purpose of the sex chromosomes, like you guys do.
It's like they just saw the title, screenshot it, didn't even read what the article said.
Right. It's called a zinger, right?
Clickbait here on YouTube.
It's like that article that says all Native American descend from a boy found in Montana. Obviously, that's not true because it's a boy. That means he died while he was a kid. So most likely he didn't have no damn children, right? But that's the title of the article. Watch this. It says here, these few individuals are not any more likely to contribute to your ancestry than all those multitudes and multitudes who do not contribute to your mtDNA or Y lineages. That's the point he was making. He's not denying that sex chromosomes reveal your paternal ancestry and maternal ancestry. He never did that. He's just saying that they don't really contribute to your ancestry, which defeats your other point about you're going to be 50% Jacob if you descend from Jacob. No, you would not. If Jacob lived 4,000 years before you were born, he contributes nothing to your autosomal DNA. Zero, zilch, nada. Or a number so small is negligible. Right? Because DNA degrades over time, right? It says also known as almost all your ancestors. What you should pay attention to are your autosomal results. Emphasis made from most of your genome. These results may be more difficult to parse, but difficulty is no sin and elegant ease is no virtue. In this case, that's because you are interested in your ancestry, not an interpretable story, not a convenient interpretable story. Because it's more convenient just look at your Y chromosome, look at your mtDNA, but it's more complex looking at autosomes. Why? Because your autosomal DNA is your admixtures by all the people you admix within a small time window, about 300 years. 500 years is the cutoff. Let's keep reading. So, of course, I'm not saying. And here's the killer right here. If that part didn't kill that, y'all not convinced. Then what he say here? Of course, I'm not saying that mtDNA and Y chromosomal haplogroups are useless. Done. You're finished. Hibachi meal. Hibachi meal, man. Osaka, man.
So haplogroups aren't useless. Interesting.
So if you read this article, right? Because you niggas don't read. If you would have spent time to read this article, shout out to the Balkan bully in the building. You could clearly see that he's not dismissing and disregarding the mtDNA and Y chromosomal haplogroups.
Well, you know, it's easier to lie to your audience when your audience doesn't research what you're saying.
Right. Because again, he's talking about all your ancestry. All your ancestry does not your direct male and direct female lines don't speak about all your ancestry. All your ancestral lines are not directly, you're not directly descended from, but it's in your autosomal and it's in your genome. That's all he's saying here. He says they are useful for population scale phylogeography, but please don't make emphasis about yourself from one data point, at least in most cases. This is what he said. And for some reason, no, ain't no some reason, you guys are charlatans. You guys are agents of deception. Again, all you guys are doing is poisoning the well because you don't want to believe your paternal results. But like I said, if you got kids, go get your kids tested. And if those are your sons, I guarantee you they're going to have the same haplogroup as you.
Okay, and then after that, from there, the Yap Gang went on to spend another 40 minutes taking a detailed look at another piece which Razib Khan had wrote, which is the article you see on your screen, and he wrote it just this past June, and it's titled, "The Haplogroup is Dead, Long Live the Haplogroup, Part 1, Why mtDNA and Y-chromosomal Lineages Matter." So I'll link to that article in the video description as well. Like I said, I'll link to all my sources, but for anyone interested in this admittedly hair-splitting debate, but anyone who's interested in the accuracy of the Teo twins' depiction of others, on this particular topic, I would recommend watching Yeshub and Ivri reading through and commenting on that article, right? Now, as for this video, which you're watching right now, I'm going to close it out with a short clip from Razib Khan's appearance on the Cut the Bull podcast. He appeared on that podcast last month, and I think this clip will help to put his article from 2013 into its proper context. You see, Razib Khan's tacit point back in 2013, and his more explicitly stated point in this clip, which you're about to see, is that American culture does not limit its interests to strict uniparental lineages, right? Most Americans will, for example, take great pride in heritages which they inherited from lines other than those of their strict paternal or maternal lines, right? Let me give as an analogy, I'll give a personal example, right? My own father was very proud of his own Filipino ancestry, and his own father, which is to say my paternal grandfather, took great pride in his Filipino heritage, or more specifically his Ilocano heritage, right? Being Filipino and more specifically Ilocano was a significant part of his identity, as that was the background of his mother, the woman who raised him. In fact, my grandfather's first language was Ilocano because that was his mother's language, right? That was the language that his mother spoke to him since he was a baby. But of course, none of that could be inferred from a mere recourse to our paternal haplogroup because my paternal line came to the Philippines from abroad. I essentially have a non-Filipino paternal line which cut through the Philippines, picking up Filipino admixture along the way. So if I or my father wanted to look at our Filipino admixture through genetics, a recourse to our haplogroup would not be helpful in that case, right? And that's the point here. The value of haplogroups will depend on what precisely you're looking for. While my paternal haplogroup cannot tell me about, recent admixture from outside my strict paternal line, it can nonetheless shed light on my strict paternal lineage. And that is the point that Razib Khan is going to make in this clip. While Americans typically do not restrict themselves to the strict paternal line, there are other cultures which are far more patriarchal in their orientation and their organization, and those cultures do put emphasis on the strict paternal line. And as Razib Khan notes, in those instances, a focus on the Y chromosome makes sense. And so, too, for people who are interested in exploring a patrilineal definition of Israelite and, exploring who may or may not descend paternally from a Bronze Age Levantine figure, in that case as well, an exploration of the haplogroups of various individuals can be quite relevant. So, as I said, I'm going to close with this clip, and as always, I welcome the comments, questions, and even criticisms of others. So, unlike the Teo twins, I don't censor the comment section of my videos. So feel free to share your thoughts, whether they're positive or negative. Now, this clip is going to pick up a little bit after the 22-minute mark of the show, and it's going to run for a little less than 2 minutes. Enjoy the clip, and God bless.
I think we have an American perspective, and that's fine. There are cultures where genealogy matters a lot. So I will tell you for a fact that, for example, Y-chromosomal whole genome sequencing, which seems silly to Americans, matters a lot to people in the Gulf, because Gulf Arab societies are organized around patrilineages. And it turns out, let's just say their mate guarding practices are very effective. There have been very few instances of the wrong Y chromosomal lineage discovered. So, for example, I mean, and these genealogies, they go back 1,000. So, for example, the Banu Hashim are the clan of Muhammad. You know, there's the Ibn. There's a bunch of them that are out there, and they've been pretty well validated. And they do whole genome sequencing, and they have consultants come in and map the different branches. And you know, to us, it seems kind of silly, but these Gulf Arab societies, they're kind of like neo-feudal oil technocracies, and they're organized around paternal lineage clans. And so they do it for that. Now, there are other, and like if you're a Jew, if you're Jewish, you're Kohanim, you know, your paternal lineage matters. All these, they have all, you know, there are societies where lineage matters a lot. If you're Indian, if you're upper caste Indian, your Gotra lineage matters, which is basically the paternal lineage, stuff like that. So, you know, I think from an American perspective, like, who cares? Because literally, like, until recently, at least, your lineage didn't matter in this society. But there are societies where it does matter a lot. And, you know, I don't know, like, I'm giving the Gulf Arab example because they do it specifically to figure out how people are related and to confirm that these two branches are actually related from some common dude, because sometimes there's some ambiguity with a dude running around the desert 200 years ago, stuff like that.